Sure. Good morning. My name is Jill Skakowski, and today we're going to talk about infection control and standard precautions. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping things. Bathrooms are located in the back of the room to the right. We will be taking two 15-minute breaks and 1 half-hour lunch today. So infection control. What you can expect to learn from this chapter is the basics of infection control, the chain of infection and how we can break that chain, and good hand washing techniques, and how to don gloves and remove them in a safe manner. So that's where we're starting. Okay. Communicable diseases are diseases that can be spread from one person to another. You must learn to protect yourself, family, and residents from this disease. You must also learn about the causes of communicable disease and the ways communicable diseases spread from person to person. First of all, what is a microbe? A microbe can also be called a microorganism, and it's something that can't be seen with the naked eye. Most microbes are not harmful, and they're actually essential for healthy living. They're in our natural flora. Some microbes, however, can cause illness and are known as pathogens. So some classifications of microbes. We have bacteria. This causes many of the infections you encounter in the healthcare setting. Viruses, they're the smallest of the microbes. Many illnesses are caused by viruses, such as your common colds, fever blisters, chickenpox, hepatitis, and AIDS. Fungi are a group of plant-like organisms. Examples of illnesses caused by fungi are ringworm, your athlete's foot, your thrush, and candidus. Parasites, these live in or on the host, such as plants or animals, and use that host for food and protection. Examples of illness caused by parasites are scabies, something you really don't want in the long-term care. Our main non-specific defense mechanisms is healthy, intact skin and mucous membranes. Once your skin cuts, abrasions, that kind of stuff, that's when the pathogens can enter the body. Mucous membranes line all of the organ systems that come in contact with the outside world, and they're namely in your respiratory, digestive tract, urinary tract, and reproductive systems. If a pathogen gets past the first lines of defense and an infection results, the body activates in a general immune response. And this is where you'll see your fever, inflammation, redness in the site of infection. So that's just kind of the basics. Antibiotics. An antibiotic is a drug that is able to kill off our bacteria or make it difficult for them to reproduce growth. Penicillin was the first antibiotic, and this was back in World War II, was first introduced. Multi-drug resistant organisms, also known as MDROs, things like your MRSA, your VREs, your vancomycin-resistant enterococci. Some good bacteria are destroyed when using antibiotics to treat infections, resulting in infections. And this is what you'll see in your C. diff or your Clostridium difficile. What happens is the antibiotic breaks down all of the good flora in your system, and then you can end up with C. diff if you're using the antibiotics quite frequently. And C. diff is a major cause of healthcare-associated diarrhea. The best policy is clearly to avoid infection in the first place. And how do we do that? It's the chain of infection. Eliminating any one of the 6 elements breaks the chain and prevents the spread of infection. So pathogen. Your pathogen is the infectious agent, such as your bacteria, your fungi, your viruses. That's what the pathogen is. It then goes to the reservoir. The reservoir it can be a human, it can be an animal, or it can be an environment. So let's say your hands are dirty, you've sneezed in them, and then you touch a surface. Now that surface can be contaminated, so that could be the reservoir. If it's a person, it could be you sneeze into your hands and you don't wash your hands, and you go and you introduce yourself to someone and shake their hand. So the reservoir is actually the place where the agent will live, it will grow, and it will multiply. Portal of exit, and this is the path which the pathogen takes to exit or leave the host. Methods of transmission. This is the way that the pathogen travels. It could be either through direct or indirect contact. Again, direct contact, shaking hands, touch. Indirect would be then touching objects, your computer boards, your telephones, those kinds of things. That would be your indirect contact. Usually it's droplet or airborne transmission. So droplet, sneezing, you know, it's out in the air. And your airborne transmissions, again, like your TBs, where it's out in the air. Portal of entry, and this is where the pathogen actually enters the host through either the mucous membrane, nose, mouth, or any breaks in the skin, okay? Your susceptible host is the person who is unable to resist the invasion of an infectious agent. So maybe they are ill, elderly, so they can't resist. So these people are more susceptible, and again, that's where the pathogen will enter. So that is our chain of infection. So in order to break the chain of infection, there's multiple things we can do. Of course, hand washing being the best one, hand hygiene. According to CDC, the most important thing we can do to keep from getting sick is hand hygiene. Can you think of times or when you think hand hygiene would be acceptable to do, or when you should do it? Thoughts?
After cares.
After cares.
In between.
Between patients.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Room to room.
Maybe when you come to work. Before or after eat.
Yeah.
Yep. Anytime you eat your lunch. Those are all times. The other thing is keeping our hosts well nourished helps so that they can fight off some of these pathogens. Our immunizations, you know, keeping safe from there. So the whole idea behind this is we need to break the chain of infection. So I have a little activity. We can go back to the back of the room, and I have a scenario, and I wanted to see just if you guys really know the chain of infection. I want you to really understand how that works, how that chain works. In order to break the chain, we need to know how the chain works. So if you want to step back to the back of the room, we can do our activity. So our activity today, just to understand that chain of infection, is I'm going to read you a scenario. I want you guys to place the specific words to the right areas, okay? So I'll kind of, I have them italicized on the paper. You guys want to share one? And I'll read it, and then we can try the activity and see if you really understand. So Ava wakes up feeling a bit under the weather, not knowing that she has rhinovirus. She goes to work as usual. Before her interview, Ava blows her runny nose one last time, then heads to Samantha's office. Ava shakes Samantha's hand while thanking her for the interview. After the interview, Samantha decides to eat lunch while reviewing the candidates for the open position. Samantha fails to wash her hands before eating. 3 days later, Samantha is sick at home with a sore throat. So you guys want to come up here together, and you kind of can figure out where those words, and I'll just say the words. It's Ava, rhinovirus, runny nose, shakes Samantha's hand, Samantha, and eating, and where they go in this chain of infection. I'll hold it.
Okay, is she the host, Ava? Because she's got her hands. Okay, she's shaking hands. Right?
Ava is the host, and then shaking Samantha's hand is the.
Port of entry.
Eva is not the host.
She's not the host. Oh,
No.
Samantha is?
Samantha's the
Oh,
susceptible host.
she's gonna get it. Okay,
Mhm.
we're kind of on the right track.
So who is
Okay.
carrying the rhinovirus? Who's the
This
reservoir?
girl right here.
Mhm.
Okay. Am I covering up that? Okay. So,
And how is it leaving Ava? The portal of exit. Remember, that's the
Shaking
path that is left.
like that or the other way? Runny nose is leaving Ava. Right? Okay. So she's got shaking the hand. Oh, wait.
Nope,
No,
that would be wrong.
Runny nose.
The
A
method of
runny nose.
access.
That's how it's exiting Ava's body.
Yep.
You guys got it.
Now hold on to that.
I'm trying.
There.
Okay. So portal of exit would be
The runny nose.
the runny
That's the
nose.
runny nose, sorry.
And then how is it entering Samantha?
She's-
Yep.
Not washing her hands.
Mhm. So just a few things. So
Okay.
Ava's got rhinovirus. One way to break that chain would have been for her to do what?
Wash hands. Or
Stay home.
Or
Stay
home.
home. Right. So Ava's got the illness. She's blowing her nose. After blowing her nose, what could she have done?
Wash her hands.
Yes. Yep. She shakes Samantha's hand. What could have Samantha done to break that chain?
Washed her hands.
Yep. Instead, she ate without washing her hands. So now Samantha is the one that is susceptible to the rhinovirus pathogen. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right. What we'll do next is I have just a little video, and then we will do a hand washing demonstration. Okay? Talk a little.
How did it happen? So we wanted to find out what's on your coworkers' hands. We had 10 people swab their hands before they washed them and then had them washed and swab again. We then took those dishes to this lab where they sat in an incubator for 24 hours.
If you look on this plate here, you see the little green ones? Those are normal mouth organisms. We call them mouth flora.
While they might seem harmless, think again.
If you see the things from your mouth, if someone has the flu or a cold, those organisms are going to be on your hands too if you're seeing other mouth organisms.
That means if your coworker has the flu from their mouth on their hands and then touches your phone, your desk, your keyboard, and your mouse, by the end of the day, the flu is everywhere and it can live there for up to 8 hours. But this can all be prevented.
If people wash their hands and do it right, they can prevent a tremendous amount of disease that goes around our community during the winter months. The proper way to wash your hands is to do it thoroughly and do it for about 20 seconds.
You don't actually have to count to 20 seconds. It's as easy as singing the ABCs or happy birthday to yourself.
You actually loosen the bacteria.
We're going to
and
stop the
viruses.
video here and we'll go back and demo. We'll go. So this is going to be the demonstration of washing our hands. As the video says, good hand washing it's got to be 20 seconds or longer, okay? So you come into your bathroom, get your water. This water gets pretty hot, so be careful. And you want to wet your hands to the wrist, always keeping your hands in a downward below your elbow and wrist. Get your soap and do a good glob. And you got to get that friction going all the way to the wrist. Get in between there, really dig in, top hands as well. Getting your fingernails, you want to do a circular motion in the palm of your hand. And the friction is really what does it. So get a good friction going. And then you're going to rinse, keeping it in a downward again. Try not to splash things around too much. Don't shake your hands, just let them drip. Grab your paper towel. It's essential that you dry your hands quite well. If you don't, the one thing is just it's really hard for you to get your gloves on after you wash your hands, but you just need to have them dry. And the last important step would be to grab a towel to shut a clean towel to shut your water off. And now I'll have you guys demonstrate. You don't have to demonstrate. Okay, so we're gonna end our afternoon. I have a post test for you guys to take. It's just a 10-question quiz just to get an idea of what you guys understand about infection control and standard precautions. Oh, can you stop?